Rian,
Yeah.
what should be the priorities for the department, for the minister? Once again, 2030 is my end goal, right? Because that's a blueprint we have in place at the moment.
Okay. If we look very carefully here, and I think we have to understand that you asked why the TVET model is not working. We're not in Norway. Okay, it's as simple as that. So if you come out of school, where do you go work? You don't go work in manufacturing. You don't go work in logistics and supply chain. You don't go work in admin in the 890 companies that earn more than 100 million in South Africa. There is no work for you. Okay, so we need to really start changing how we see supply and demand. Okay, because everybody else understands it. We don't. Okay, so today, the average 11-year-old wants to be a YouTube star. Okay, they can tell you how to like and subscribe and how to run the channel and how to get influencers on there, etc. We need to understand that that person is going to finish matric and want a job. Okay, am I going to give them the types of qualifications that are going to support them to become holistic individuals, so that one day when they realize YouTube's not everything and you can't manifest everything, am I then going to have that person as a productive citizen in a society so that they can pay for their Tesla or their Chinese electric vehicle that's going to be imported? Unless we start looking towards a place where we produce our own electric vehicle in Africa, we will never have the factories to have the jobs for these people leaving matric. So TVET's classic example, 34% unemployment rate of people that have completed a TVET qualification. That's called a parking spot. Okay, I have a rebellious youth that I now need to park for 3 or 4 years to simmer them, because if every one of those people ended up being unemployed as a matriculant, we would have categorically a revolution in this country. It's one of the classic signs for doing that. So, question is, what should the minister do? He should focus on 2 things. Okay, one is working with his other departments to actually come up with jobs, but innovation-driven jobs, not just making new ways that we are driving labor. And in the higher education space, I think the only thing that government should really focus on is throughput. Okay, I think the statistic that you mentioned, where only 30% of people that come in walk out, it's criminal. Yeah, I've trained more than 4,000 entrepreneurs. Yeah? More than 30% of them at some point in time attempted higher education. Yeah, they were there. They signed up for the skills. Yeah, and the system didn't support them. The minister needs to fix the throughput in education.
No, the minister's never going to fix the throughput in education.
Well,
it's not the minister who's going to fix it.
That's what they're measuring, though.
It's the benchmark, and I think that's the problem. Is it's been presented in the space as the benchmark, and when your benchmark is 35% throughput rate, what is that actually even communicating about the quality of?
As a person who is not in the space but is a taxpayer, and some of my taxpayers' money is going towards certainly the public education, higher education space, I can tell you now, 30% throughput rate is a bad investment in my world. Like why?
It's minimum time, so I think it's.
So completing it in 3 years or 4 years, depending on the length of the degree or the course. As a person who is paying towards the education of those students, I'm not happy.
Agreed. Agreed.
But perhaps it's because the post-school sector, the TVET sector, it hasn't been sufficiently supported. So everybody's rushing to university when there isn't, because the alternative might be a better place.
Well, I think there's an argument to be made for what you've said about the parking lot. I like that idea. But I think one of the key mistakes that the department has made is to delegate that responsibility to higher education. So there was a point, and I think it might have been around 2001, 2002, when everybody had to have a module on entrepreneurship in every single degree. It didn't matter what you were studying. You could be studying philosophy and you would have a module on entrepreneurship, or theology, for instance. There are some disciplines and some areas of study that just need to be supported because they are important for the cultural, intellectual, social well-being of the country. You cannot then solve the unemployment problem by making universities and private providers add a module, just like you couldn't solve the HIV/AIDS problem by adding a module on HIV/AIDS into higher education. And I think that's what the history of our department is. It's, we have a national priority. I've got a good idea, let's make the universities do it. So even when we receive students who are not prepared for high school education, that burden has not been placed on the Department of Basic Education, it has been placed on higher education. So now we have things like, the DHET saying, well, there's extended programs, so now you can do 4 years and you get additional funding. How do we solve a problem? And I think it links back to what Divya said, is that we need an actual strategy, not knee-jerk responses, it feels like sometimes.
But just to Gloria's point, I just want to,
Yeah.
I think you touched on something really key. It's that fragmented approach.
Yeah.
It's who wakes up one morning and decides this might be the thing we need to do. And I think that's where a lot of
Who should be driving it? Who should be determining that this is the future we want to envision for South Africa? And in order for us to realize that future, we then need basic education to be doing A. We need higher education to be doing B. We need DTI to be doing C. One would think it comes from the presidency and the cabinet, but I would imagine it needs to involve more than just the politicians, doesn't it?
I think so. Look, it's a different, I would have said, surely at this point in time, South Africa, when they sit at there, when the group of important people who make the decisions sit together and think about the country and their success and their lack of success, I think higher education has to feature on and a problem area and what hasn't worked. So one would expect that we have a minister in the presidency for monitoring and evaluation. And if higher education is not working, is that, to start with, I'm saying, is that not somebody who should call the role players together? You've got trade and industry, you've got higher education, so I think that's a one level. And let's see what we can do at a strategic level. But I agree with you, they're not the only people. Within the sector, for example, we've got the regulating authorities there. The legislation says that the CHE advises the minister.
They were never supposed to be a regulator.
That is an important role that they have. They need to be more outspoken in their advisory role. It doesn't help, in my view, to publish 1, 3, or 5 little documents and put it out and only we read those documents. You need to be an ambassador for that change to happen. SAQA, for example, where do you ever hear anything coming out from them about what's happening in the sector, where the trajectory is the qualifications framework even a success? Does it work? So I would expect the regulatory authorities, but then we just spoke about USAF that can create terminology out of its own, and that's the Committee of University Principals there. What I think we're not seeing is we've created a host of bodies. So some are created by statute, some are as a result of their parliamentary positions, some are because they're sectoral. But for me, the one big problem that I have is that there is such a dearth of mobilization for change from the sector. It's a kind of a quiet malaise that has set in, and we all talk amongst ourselves, and we have these conversations, but we don't stand up and say, let's make it happen. And it's those voices. And that said, individuals can also do the change. I mean, there's nothing that says that universities or, whenever people stand up on platforms to say. So to some extent, I look in the mirror and I look at myself and I say, you've been in the sector for 33 years in senior management. What have you said?